Yo, yo, yo. This is day 15 of reading every single day for the rest of my life. Today we got a very, very excited book. A book I'm very, very excited in. It's called Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. And I remember being at the library looking for this, or like looking for, you know what I mean, a self improvement book. And discipline is one of those things that is very, very important in the acting world. Um, I hold it like top three most important things to have is discipline. And I read the first page and I was just, you know what I mean? I automatically got sucked in. So I'm ready to start this. I'm so excited. So 30 minutes. Let's get this clock moving, man. Let's get this clock moving. All right, 30 minutes starting now. As you can see, there we go. You can see all the other 30 minutes. Oh my gosh. Here we go. I'm excited. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1. The Four Virtues. I'm so excited. It was long ago now that Hercules came to the crossroads. At a quiet intersection in the hills of Greece, in the shade of knobby pine trees, the great hero of Greek myth first met his destiny. Where exactly it was or when, no one knows. We hear of this moment of the stories of Socrates, when we can see it captured in the most beautiful art of the Renaissance. We can feel his budding energy, his strapping muscles, and his anguish. In the classic Bach cantata. If John Adams had had his way in 1776, Hercules at the Crossroads would have been immortalized of the official seal of the newly founded United States. Ooh, I didn't know that. Because there, before the man's undying fame, before the 12 labors, before he changed the world, Hercules faced a crisis, one as life-changing and real as any of us have ever faced. Where was he headed? Where was he trying to go? That's the point of the story. Alone, unknown, unsure. Hercules, like so many, did not know. Where the road diverged lay a beautiful goddess who offered him every temptation he could imagine. Adorned in finery, she promised him a life of ease. She swore he'd never taste want or unhappiness or fear or pain. Follow her, she said, and his every desire would be fulfilled. Wow. On the other path stood a sterner goddess in a pure white robe. She made a quieter call. She promised no rewards except those that came as a result of hard work. It would be a long journey, she said. There would be sacrifice. 1 second, I'm reading. There would be scary moments, but it was a journey fit for a god. It would make him the person his ancestors meant him to be. Was this real? Did it happen? If it's only a legend, does it matter? Yes, because this is a story about us, about our dilemma, about our own crossroads. For Hercules, the choice was between vice and virtue, the easy way and the hard way, the well-trod path and the road less traveled. We all face this choice. Hesitating only for a second, Hercules chose the one that made all the difference. He chose virtue. Virtue can seem old-fashioned, yet virtue, arete, translates to something very simple and very timeless. Excellence, moral, physical, mental. In the ancient world, virtue was comprised of four components: courage, temperance, justice, wisdom. The touchstones of goodness, the philosopher King Marcellus Aurelius called them. To millions, they're known as the cardinal virtues, four near universal ideals adopted by Christianity and most of Western philosophy, but equally valued in Buddhism, Hinduism, and just about every other philosophy you can imagine. They're called cardinal. C.S. Lewis pointed out not because they come down from church authorities, but because they originate from the Latin cardo, or hinge. It's pivotal stuff. It's the stuff that the door to the good life hangs on. There are also our topic for this book, and for this series. 4 books, 4 virtues. One aim to help you choose. Courage, bravery, fortitude, honor, sacrifice. Temperance, self-control, moderation, composure, balance. Justice, fairness, service, fellowship, goodness, kindness. Wisdom, knowledge, education, truth, self-reflection, peace. These are the key to a life of honor, of glory, of excellence in every sense. Character traits that John Steinbeck perfectly described as pleasant and desirable to their owner and makes him perform acts of which he can be proud of and with which he can be pleased. but the he must be taken to mean all of humankind. There was no feminine version of the word virtues in Rome. Virtue wasn't male or female. It was. It just was. It still is. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you're physically strong or painfully shy, a genius or of average intelligence. Virtue is a universal imperative. The virtues are interrelated and inseparable, yet each as distinct from the other. Doing the right thing almost always takes courage, just as discipline is almost without the wisdom to know what is worth choosing. What good is courage if not applied to justice? What good is wisdom if it does not make us more modest? North, south, east, west, the four virtues are a kind of compass. They are a reason that the 4 points of a compass are called the cardinal directions. They guide us. They show us where we are and what is true. Aristotle described a virtue as a kind of craft, something to pursue just as one pursues the mastery of any profession or skill. We become builders by building, and we become harpists by playing the harp, he wrote. Similarly, then, we become just by doing just actions, temperate by doing temperate actions, brave by doing brave actions. Virtue is something we do. It's something we choose. Not once for Hercules Crossroads was not a singular event. It's a daily challenge, one we face not once but constantly, repeatedly. Will we be selfish or selfless? Brave or afraid? Strong or weak? Wise or stupid? Will we cultivate a good habit or a bad one? Courage or cowardice? The bliss of ignorance or the challenge of a new idea? Stay the same or grow? The easy way or the right way? Introduction. Would you have a great empire? Rule over yourself. Would you have a great empire? Rule over yourself. I like that. We live in times of plenty and freedom that would have been unfathomable to even our most recent ancestors. An ordinary person in a developed nation has at their disposal luxuries and opportunities that all-powerful kings were once impotent to acquire. We are warm in the winter, cool in the summer, stuffed far from the often than hungry. We can go where we want, do what we want, believe what we want. With the snap of our fingers, pleasures and distractions appear. Before where you are, travel. Hate your job? Change it. Crave it? Have it. Think it? Say it. Want it? Buy it. Dream it? Chase it. Come on. Come on. Nearly anything you want, whenever you want it, however you'd like it, it's yours. This is our human right, as it should be. And yet, what do we have to show for all this? Certainly not widespread flourishing, empowered, unshackled, blessed beyond expectation. We are so damn unhappy. Because we mistake liberty for license. Freedom as Eisenhower famously said, it's actually only the opportunity for self-discipline. Unless we'd rather be adrift, vulnerable, disordered, disconnected, we are responsible for ourselves. Technology, access, success, power, privilege, this is only a blessing when accompanied by the second of the cardinal virtues, self-restraint. Temperantia, moderatio, incratia, sophrosyne, mush. There's like some Greek words on here I'm trying to read. Mushempatipara, zangoyon, wasat. I'm so sorry. From Aristotle to Heraclitus, St. Thomas Aquinas to the Stoic, from the Iliad to the Bible in Buddhism, in Confucianism, in Islam, the ancients had many words and many symbols for what amounts to a timeless law of the universe. We must keep ourselves in check or risk ruin, or imbalance, or dysfunction, or dependency. Of course, not everyone's problems are a result of plenty, but everybody benefits from self-discipline and self-control. Life is not fair. Gifts are not handed out evenly. And the reality of this inequity is that those of us coming from disadvantage have to be even more disciplined to have a chance. They have to work harder. They have less room for error. Even those with fewer freedoms still face countless daily choices about which urges to indulge, what actions they'll take, what they'll accept or demand for themselves. In this sense, we're all in the same boat. The fortunate as well as the unfortunate must figure out how to manage their emotions, Abstain from what should be abstained from. Choose what standards to observe. We must master ourselves unless we'd prefer to be mastered by someone or something else. We can say that each of us has a higher and lower self, and that these two selves are in a constant battle with each other. The can versus the should. What we can get away with and what's best. The side that can focus and the side that is easily distracted. The side that strives and reaches, the side that stoops and compromises. The side that seeks balance, the side that loves chaos and excess. The word for this inner battle to the ancients was akrasia. Akrasia. But it's really that same Heraclean crossroads once again. What will we choose? Which side will win? Who will you be? The ultimate form of greatness. In the first book of the series on the cardinal virtues, courage was defined as the willingness to put your ass on the line for something, for someone, for what you know you need to do. Self-discipline, the virtue of temperance, is even more important. The ability to keep your ass in line. The ability to work hard, to say no, to practice good habits and set boundaries, to train, to prepare, and to prepare, to ignore temptations and provocations, to keep your emotions in check, to endure painful difficulties. Self-discipline is given everything you have and knowing what to hold back. Is there some contradiction in this? No, only balance. Ooh, I like that. Some things we resist, some things we pursue, in all things we proceed with moderation, intentionally, reasonably, without being consumed or carried away. Temperance is not deprived but command of oneself, physically, mentally, spiritually, demanding the best of oneself, even when no one is looking, even when allowed less. It takes courage to live this way, not because it's hard, but because it sets you apart. Discipline, then, is both predictive and deterministic. It makes it more likely you'll be successful, and it ensures success or failure that whatever happens, you are great. The converse is also true. A lack of discipline puts you in danger. It also colors who and what you are. Let's go back to Eisenhower and his idea that freedom is the opportunity for self-discipline. Does his own life not prove this? He plodded through some 30 years of unglamorous military postings before earning the rank of general, and had to watch stateside as his colleagues won medals and acclaim on the battlefield. In 1944, when he was appointed Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in World War II, he suddenly controlled an army of some 3 million men. Wow. The tip of a war effort that ultimately involved more than 50 million people. There, at the head of the Alliance of Nations, totaling upward of 700 million citizens, he discovered that far from being exempt from the rules, he had to be stricter with himself than ever. He came to find that the best way to lead was not by force or fiat, but through persuasion, through compromise, through patience, by controlling his temper, and most of all, by example. Emerging from the war, he was a victor of victors, having achieved conquests at the level no man at arms have ever, or hopefully will ever again. Then, as president, overseeing a newfound arsenal of nuclear weapons, he was literally the most powerful human being in the world. There was almost no one or anything that could tell him what to do, nothing that could stop him, no one who did not look up at him in admiration or away from him in fear. Yet his presidency involved no new wars, no use of those horrible weapons, no escalation of conflict, and he left office with prescient warnings about the machinery that creates war, the so-called military-industrial complex. Indeed, Eisenhower's most notable use of force in office came when he sent the 101st Airborne Division to protect a group of black children on the way to school for the first time. And where were the scandals, public enrichment, broken promises? There weren't any. His greatness, like all true greatness, was not rooted in aggression or ego or his appetite or a vast fortune, but in simplicity and restraint, and how he commanded himself, which in turn made him worthy of commanding others. Contrast him with the conquerors of his time, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. Contrast him with even his contemporaries, MacArthur, Patton, Montgomery. Contrast him with his peers of the past, Alexander the Great, Xerxes, Napoleon. In the end, what endures, what we truly marvel at, is not the ambition but the self-mastery, the self-awareness, the temperance. As a young man, Eisenhower's mother had quoted him a verse from the book of Proverbs. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty. She had told him, and he that ruleth his spirit, that he that taketh a city. She taught him the same lesson that Seneca himself tried to instill to the rulers he advised, that most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. And so it goes that Eisenhower quite literally conquered the world by conquering himself first. Wow. Still, there is a part of us that celebrates, perhaps envies those who let themselves get away with more, who hold themselves to lower standards. The rock stars, the famous, the wicked. It seems easier, it seems like more fun. It might even be the way to get ahead. Is that right? No, it's an illusion. Under closer inspection, no one has a harder time than the lazy. No one experiences more pain than the glutton. No success is shorter lived than the reckless or endlessly ambitious. Failing to realize your full potential is a terrible punishment. Greed moves the goalposts, preventing one from ever enjoying what one has. Even if the outside world celebrates them, on the other side there is only misery, self-loathing, and dependence. With regards of temperance, the ancients were fond of the metaphor of a charioteer. To win the race, one must not only get their horses to run quickly, but also keep the team under control, calm their nerves and jitters, have such a firm grasp on the reins that they can steer the pinpoint precision in even the most difficult of circumstances. The charioteer must figure out how to balance strictness and kindness, the light of the heavy touch. They have to pace themselves and their animals and find every ounce of speed when it counts. A driver without control will go fast, but they will inevitably crash, especially around the harpin turns of the arena and the winding, pockmarked road of life, especially when the crowd and competition are rooting for exactly that. It is through discipline that not only are all things possible, but also that all things are enhanced. Name someone truly great without self-discipline. Name one calamitous undoing that was not, at least in part, rooted in lack of self-discipline. More than talent, life is about temperament and temperance. The people we admire most and will explore in this book: Marcus Aurelius, Queen Elizabeth II, Louis Gehrig, Angela Merkel, Martin Luther King Jr., George Washington, Winston Churchill, inspire us with their restraint and dedication. The cautionary tales of history, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, King George V, stung us with their self-inflicted destruction. And because each of us contains multitudes, sometimes we see both excess and restraint in the same person and learn from both. Freedom requires discipline. Discipline gives us freedom. Freedom and greatness. Your destiny is there. Will you grab the reins? Discipline is destiny. Here's the actual chapter 1. Sorry, that was a preface. Part 1. The exterior. The body. Our body is our glory, our hazard, and our care. We begin with the self, the physical form. In St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, we're told to keep under the body and bring it into subjection, so that we do not be made a castaway. The Roman tradition, according to the Stoics, was about endurance, a frugal diet, and the modest use of material possessions. They wore functional clothes and shoes, ate off functional plates, drank moderately out of functional glasses, and committed earnestly to the rituals of ancient life. Do we pity this? Do we pity this? Or admire its simplicity and dignity? In a world of abundance, each of us must wrestle with our desires, our urges, as well as the timeless battle to strengthen ourselves for the vicissitudes of life. This is not about six-pack abs or the avoidance of all that feels good, but instead about developing the fortitude required for the path we have chosen. It's about being able to go the distance and steering clear of the blindness and mirages along the way. If we don't dominate ourselves physically, who and what does dominate? Outside forces, laziness, adversity, entropy, atrophy. We do the work today and always because it's what we're here for. I love this book. And we know that while it might seem easy to take it easy and more pleasurable to indulge our pleasure centers in the long run, it is far more painful route. It is a far more painful route. Ruling over the body. He played through fevers and migraines. He played through crippling back pain, pulled muscles, sprained ankles, and once, the day after being hit in the head by an 80-mile-per-hour fastball, he suited up and played in Babe Ruth's hat because the swelling made it impossible to put it on his own. For 2,130 consecutive games, Louis Gehrig played first base for the New York Yankees, a streak of physical stamina that stood for the next 5.5 decades. It was a feat of human endurance, so long immortalized that it is easy to miss how incredible it actually was. The Major League Baseball regular season in those days was 152 games. Gehrig's Yankees went deep in the postseason nearly every year, reaching the World Series a remarkable 7 times. For 17 years, Gehrig played from April to October without rest, at the highest level imaginable. In the off-season, players brainstormed and played in exhibition games, sometimes traveling as far as Japan to do so. During his time with the Yankees, Gehrig played some 350 doubleheaders and traveled at least 200,000 miles across the country, mostly by train and bus. Wow. Yet he never missed a game, not because he was never injured or sick, but because he was an iron horse of a man who refused to quit, who pushed through the pain and physical limits that others would have used as an excuse. At some point, Gehrig's hands were x-rayed and stunned. Doctors found at least 17 healed fractures over the course of his career. He'd broken nearly every one of his fingers, and it not only hadn't slowed him down, but he'd failed to say a word about it. In other sense, it's almost unfairly famous for the streak which overshadows the stats he accumulated along the way. His career battling average was an unbelievable 340, which he topped only when it counted, hitting 361 in the postseason in his postseason career. In 2 different World Series, he battled over 500. He hit 495 home runs, including 23 grand slams, a record that stood more than 7 decades. In 1934, he became just the 3rd player ever to win the MLB Triple Crown, leading to the league in batting average, home runs, and RBIs, runs batted in. His 6th all-time with 194 RBIs makes him effectively one of the greatest teammates in the history of the game. He was a 2-time MVP, 7-time All-Star, 6-time World Series champion, Hall of Famer, and the first player to ever have his number retired. I didn't know that. Wow. While the streak started in earnest in June 1925, when Gehrig replaced Wally Pipp, a Yankees legend, in reality, his Hercules endurance could be seen at an early age. Born to German immigrants in New York in 1903, Gehrig was the only one of 4 children to survive infancy. He entered the world of a whopping 14 pounds, and his mother's German cooking seems to have plumped him up from there. It was the teasing of school kids that first hardened the determination of the young boy, sending him to his father's Turnivieren, a German gymnastic club where Gehrig began to develop the powerful lower body that later drove in so many runs. Not naturally coordinated, a boyhood from once joked that Gehrig's body often behaved as if it were drunk. He wasn't born an athlete, he made himself one. Life as a poor immigrant was not easy. Gehrig's father was a drinker and a bit of a layabout. It's more than ironic to read of his father's chronic excuses in 6 days. This example shamed Gehrig, inspiring him to turn toughness into negotiable assets. In a bit of foreshadowing, he never missed a day of school. Thankfully, his mother not only devoted on him, she provided an incredible example of a quiet, indefatigable work ethic as well. She worked as a cook, she worked as a laundress, she worked as a baker, she worked as a cleaning lady, hoping to provide her son a ticket to a better life. But the poverty was always there. No one who went to school with Lou, a classmate recalled, can forget the cold winter days and Lou coming to school wearing a khaki shirt, khaki pants, and heavy brown shoes, but no overcoat, nor any hat. He was a poor boy, a fate no one would choose, but it did shape him. There's a story about Cleanthes. There is a story about Cleanthes, the Stoic philosopher who, as he walked through Athens on a cold day, had his thin cloak blown open by a gust of wind. Observers were stunned to find he had little else on underneath, despite the frigid temperatures. Slowly they burst into applause at the sheer endurance of it. So it went with Gehrig, who, even as his Yankee salary made him one of the highest paid athletes in America, was rarely seen in a hat or even in a vest in New York winters. Only later, when he married a kind and loving woman, could he be convinced to put on a coat for her sake. Most kids like to play sports. Louis Gehrig saw in the game a higher calling. Baseball was a profession that demanded control of it, as well as care for the body, since it was both the obstacle and the vehicle for success. Gehrig did both. He worked harder than anyone. Fitness was almost a religion to him. One teammate would say of him, "I am a slave to baseball." Gehrig said, "A willing slave, a slave who loved the job and remained forever grateful at the opportunity to play." This kind of dedication pays dividends. When Gehrig stepped up to the plate, he was communing with something divine. He stood, serenely, in a heavy wool uniform that no player today could perform in. He could sway, trading weight between his feet, settling into his battling stance. When he swung at a pitch, it was his enormous legs that did the work, sending the ball off his bat deep, deep out of the ballpark. Some batters have a sweet spot. Gehrig could hit anywhere, off anyone, and when he did, he ran. For a guy who was teased for having piano legs, it's pretty remarkable that Gehrig stole home plate more than a dozen times in his career. He wasn't all-powerful, he was speed too, hustle, finesse. There were players with more talent, with more personality, with more brilliance, but nobody outworked him, nobody cared about conditioning, and nobody loved the game more. When you love the work, you don't cheat it or the demands it asks you. You respect even the most trivial aspects of pursuit. He threw his bat or even flipped it. One of the only times he ever got in trouble was management when they found out he was only playing stickball in the streets of his old neighborhood with local kids, sometimes after the Yankees games. He just couldn't pass up the opportunity to play. Still, there must have been so many days when he wasn't feeling it, when he wanted to quit, when he doubted himself, when he felt like he could barely move, when he was frustrated and tired of his own standards. Gehrig was not superhuman. He had the same voice in his head that all of us do. He just cultivated the strength, made a habit, and not listening to it. Because once you start compromising, well, now you're compromised. "I have the will to play," he said. "Baseball is hard work, and the strain is tremendous, sure. It's pleasurable, but it's tough. You think that everyone has the will to play, but of course that's not true. Some of us get it by natural talent, hoping never to be tested. Others are dedicated up to a point, but they'll quit if it gets too hard. That was true then, as it is now, even at the elite level. A manager in Gehrig's time described it as an age of alibis. Everyone was ready with an excuse. There was always a reason why they couldn't give their best, didn't have to hold the line, were showing up to camp less than prepared. As a rookie, Joe DiMaggio once asked Gehrig who he thought was going to pitch for the opposing team, hoping perhaps to hear it was someone easy to hit. "Never worry about that, Joe," Gehrig explained. "Just remember they always save the best for the Yankees." And by extension, he expected every member of the Yankees to bring their best with them too. That was the ideal. To whom much is given, much is expected. The obligation of a champion is to act like a champion, while working as hard as somebody with something to prove. Garrick wasn't a drinker. He didn't chase girls or thrills or drive fast cars. He was no good time Charlie. He'd often say at the same time, he made it clear, I'm not a preacher, and I'm not a saint. His biographer, Paul Gallico, who grew up in the New York City only a few years ahead of Garrick, wrote that the man's clean living did not grow out of smugness or prudery, a desire for personal sanctification. He had a stubborn, pushing ambition. He wanted something. He chose the most sensible and efficient route to getting it. One doesn't take care of the body because to abuse it is a sin, but because if we abuse the temple, we insult our chances of success as much as any god. Garrick was fully ready to admit that his discipline meant he missed out on a few pleasures. He also knew that those who live the life faster... 30 minutes is up, but hold on. I want to finish this paragraph. Still, Garrick could have easily gone in a different direction. In the midst of an early career slump... I messed up. Garrick was fully ready to admit discipline never. He also came to know that those who live the fast or easy life miss something too. They fail to fully realize their own potential. Discipline isn't deprivation. It brings rewards. So we're on page 8. 30 minutes just ended. That was the fastest 30 minutes ever because I was just so in it. Like, I was so in it. That's also kind of what happened also with the first time reading an actor's handbook, but I read it a second time, so I was like, okay, now I'm just trying to get this in my brain. But, like, reading this and, like, an actual kind of, like, the foundation of this book is really nice, and I really like it. It's, it's very philosophical in storytelling. But, yeah, I will see you guys day 16. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much.